We get an update that Don Sweeney catches a 2-year extension and will be remaining in Boston. So now it's time to move forward and figure out who the next head coach of the Boston Bruins will be. But as we mentioned in trending, now that this news is solidified, what did you make of it? You were around the team all season long. How does it help to just kind of have that question mark off the back of the shoulder and be able to kind of focus forward?
Yeah, well, first of all, I expected it, right? I mean, it didn't seem like that they were going to part ways, right? And you just have to go back to the trade deadline to answer that question because, again, a general manager who has, the green light to trade all of those veteran players, including Brad Marchand, your captain, is obviously a part of this thing moving forward. So that was, that question I think had been answered earlier. But in terms of moving forward, and I talked about this earlier in trending, this is a huge offseason for Don Sweeney and the Bruins because of the fact that you have the number 7 overall pick, right? But before that, you got to find a new head coach to lead this team. And you have to find a head coach who, has the ability to coach, your existing veteran players, your stars, your Charlie McAvoys, your David Pasternaks, your Jeremy Swaymans, some of the other veterans that you have in, but also cultivate some of the young talent as well, because we're talking about a Bruins team going into next year that has a number of players who don't have a lot of NHL experience. At least as we speak right now, there are a lot of players, that we saw towards the end of the season who don't have a lot of NHL experience under their belt and who are probably going to play roles, at least a few of them, next year. So you need to find a balance with that. Now, there are a couple of head coaches that are off the board, and Rick Tocchet obviously being the latest one. It seems at this point that the Bruins are targeting, maybe an assistant coach, a current assistant coach on a staff that could still be playing in the postseason. So, that's yet to be determined. But yeah, this is a huge offseason for the Bruins in more ways than one. And really, in a lot of ways, not uncharted territory, but it's been a long time since they've had an offseason like that, with a high draft pick and some questions moving forward.
All right, well, maybe we can get a little bit more insight. We're going to bring in Andrew Raycroft, as promised, to come chat with Adam Pellerin and myself. Good morning. It's weird calling you Andrew. I was about to be like, good morning, Andrew. What's up, Razor? How's it going?
What's up, morning? You can call me basically whatever you want. I will, except Andy. My mom did not like Andy, so I won't answer to that. Great. Hopefully you guys are well.
Oh, yeah, we're solid, except for the fact that Boston decided to go back to winter, but that's a conversation I'll bore you with another day and another time.
My golf game is not going to be enjoyable today. Way too cold for golf.
Way too cold. I haven't even made it back to the golf course since August, but we got some news for the Bruins. Don Sweeney gets that 2-year extension, and of course we just wanted to get your take on it, what this can mean to help answer some questions moving forward, because at the end of the day, Adam kind of already said it, heading into a different offseason, expectations are high, but there's a lot of moving pieces that we got to get solidified.
There are, and that's why you see the extension come down, I guess, at this point. I don't think, listen, Don's, for the lack of playoff this year, I think everyone around the hockey world sees how hard Don works and what a great job Don has done over the last 10 years. So I don't think he was going anywhere. But when you are on your last year of the deal, this extension needs to just come out as news and solidify his job and the decisions that he's made, not only going over this summer, but just the ones that he made over the deadline. I mean, what an overhaul to get rid of the captain and Charlie Coyle and Brandon Carlo and Trent Frederick, pieces that have been here for a long time. So to make those decisions, plus the decisions at the draft, plus the decisions on a head coach, I think it's in everybody's best interest to have some confidence in behind that with a 2-year extension.
Razor, as we get further into. By the way, hi, buddy. It's good to see you.
What's up?
That was like all business there for a second.
Was. Well,
I know.
Like Kasey said hello, and I kind of sat here and listened, and then I realized I didn't say hi to my Hockey East Beanpot buddy. So hey, I wanted to say hi.
I got to start preparing now. We got to start preparing now. February 5th is right around the corner.
I got BU and BC notes right here, buddy. I'm ready to go. 2026 is going to be here before you know it. Yeah. The further this goes along, Razor, into the offseason, is the belief that, the head coach of the Bruins are targeting is probably currently in the playoffs right now on a bench somewhere?
Yeah, and whether that's the AHL, whether that's the NHL, like you mentioned, an assistant coach. The other thing that I would add to that is there is a possibility that the guy that they end up with is not on a bench right now, but they need to talk to the guys that are on the bench. So that's like the one caveat is they could end up hiring somebody, but they want to make sure with whoever else that is still involved in playoff time. And again, that could be the AHL, it could be the NHL. So the other thing too, to add to that is Mike Sullivan off the board right away, the Rangers. Rick Tocchet off the board. Adam Foote goes to Vancouver because he's in-house. They knew they wanted that guy. Seattle doesn't have a coach yet. So there's still some moving pieces. It's not like it's just the Bruins couldn't get a coach and now they have to wait. I think they've decided early in this process to lock in, take their time, wait till the dust settles of the whole entire playoffs, and then make the decision from there. So they weren't going against Joel Quenneville. They weren't going for Rick Tocchet. They weren't going for Mike Sullivan. So they had the opportunity to wait. And from all accounts, they've interviewed many, many people.
Yeah, Elliot Friedman said like roughly 15 guys have gone through the interview process with the Bruins. But before we ask maybe any front runners that come to mind for you, I think the most important thing is characteristic fit. What do you think are some of the key things that the next Bruins head coach will have to need or have characteristically in order to kind of move forward with the group of blended veterans and new guys that'll be coming into the mix?
Well, I'm not sure. Name-wise, I don't have any front runners. I've kind of heard all the names that everyone else has that's been out there, and that kind of goes as well to what they want. My only assumption is, and I haven't had a lot of conversation on this, but the assumption is with the fact they didn't go with the Sullivan, they didn't go with the Tocchet, is that they're looking for a guy who is development focused. Whether a younger guy, an upstart guy, along the lines of Jim Montgomery. Again, that he was a guy. Of course, he did coach in the NHL for a year and a half, but he was a college coach prior to that, and then rebuilding his name and his brand. And so I look at it just kind of reading between the lines, I suppose, with the 15 interviews that you just mentioned, Kasey, with the fact they didn't go big with the three big names that were on the board, Quenneville, Tocchet, Sullivan, that they're looking for a guy, a little bit of a fresh voice in the league, different ideas, and one who's going to be focused on development, focused on skill.
With that said, Razor, obviously the front office is going to have the final say, but because you mentioned the word development and you have, young players that are probably going to be on this roster next season that don't have a whole hell of a lot of NHL experience, but you still have, the Charlie McAvoys, the David Pastrnak, some of the other veterans who are in the room. Are these, not that they need a seal of approval from those players, but are they consulted about this kind of thing? Is there a constant, take us behind the scenes, is there a constant dialogue? No,
there isn't. It seems that it's kind of and it's a good question, Adam, because I see it all the time in that, like in Pittsburgh, they don't have a coach yet. Well, Sidney Crosby, he's going to be the one. No, they went and asked Sid in World Championships. He's like, I don't do that. It would be fascinating to people how little these guys have and want to be involved. They don't want to be involved. I think that's the huge difference. And we see it in different sports where you hear a lot about the quarterback. You hear a lot about the best player on a basketball team influencing who the coach is going to be, and it should be this kind of a person. The hockey guys, especially the stars, they don't want anything to do with that. They don't want to be coaches. They don't want that responsibility. And I think it would be surprising to people how little they actually are involved. They stay out of it, on purpose. They're players. The coach is the coach. They tell them what to do, and they go out and do it. And that's where it ends. So from all of my experience, I've never had a player get involved with a coaching hire in any way whatsoever. Of course, there'll be a conversation like, do you know this guy? What have you heard of this guy? What are the players saying of this, and this guy? But it won't be just one specific guy either. It'll be the 15 guys. You're probably going to, shake the tree on all 15 of those guys with certain players. So guys don't get involved. David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy are not sitting in an interview room dealing with the process. And at the end of the day, you look at the Washington model where that's the easiest one, I guess. It was with Carberry coming in. He's blended both the young and the old. That seems to be the teams that are in the Bruins situation that are trying to retool this thing on the fly are looking for a guy like that who can connect with both the young guys, but also give the older guys a new voice, maybe a few new tricks, but a lot of rope to do their thing.
I actually love that you asked that question, because that's what you hear the most is like the players are going to make the final decision. And of course, and I've seen the Sidney Crosby conversation on Twitter a lot as well. Kind of speaking to that, though, you would think that they just kind of want to focus on the role ahead. And some of these guys are probably going to have a new leadership role ahead. We've heard some different opinions on who the potential new captain can be. I think that you've already spoke to it a little bit. But if you had to make a decision, where would you gravitate towards in terms of somebody who can probably step up vocality-wise and leadership-wise and maybe represent that C in the upcoming season?
Well, it's David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy. I'm curious if they do go with again, that'll all kind of fall into place after a coach. That again is another thing that's the coach's decision, along with the general manager and probably even Cam Neely, to have a discussion on which way they want to go with the leadership. Do they want to hand a C out this summer? Do they want to wait and have everybody in-house with a few assistant captains and go from there? That'll be a discussion when they do have a coach. But from my vantage point, it's David or it's Charlie, and they both have qualities that and personalities that fit differently. So again, it comes down to preference, I suppose. I've always thought a Boston Bruin captain is a defenseman. Whether that's Ray Bourque, Zdeno Chara, Bobby Orr. I have that vision in my head with Charlie McAvoy. And I would have said that prior to last season, but the way David Pastrnak handled himself without Charlie McAvoy after the deadline with Brad Marchand leaving a void, and the way David stepped up, I have no issues with him being the captain either. So they're in good hands going forward. And again, it'll be up to a coach and a general manager on preference, but as we've heard over and over and over again, it's a group effort leadership-wise in that dressing room, and there'll be more names than just those two that are involved in team decisions.
I want to ask you about a former captain, Brad Marchand, currently in the Eastern Conference Finals, up 1-0 in their series against the Hurricanes. There was some speculation that this offseason Toronto might target Marchand. Can you envision a scenario where Brad Marchand's a Leaf?
I do. I do. If I was in charge of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'd give Brad whatever he wanted. To have him go in there again, that team losing in Game 7 the way they did, I would, without question, seems like Brad would be the ultimate. I go back. I think about 2004 and the Red Sox, because that's the best scenario. That's the best. Kevin Millar, a guy that just keep chilling. I don't care about media. I don't care about anybody. We're just gonna go play, and Brad would be able to handle that as well as anybody. So if I was in charge of the Maple Leafs, I'd give him whatever he wants. Now that's a whole nother story whether Brad would actually go there, et cetera, et cetera. But there's certainly a scenario where Brad would go there and change culture, because you can see what he's done with the Florida Panthers. He's a Hall of Famer. I just saw the stat. 10 years he's had over 10 points in the playoffs, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's up there with like Maurice Richard, Henry Richard, Jean Beliveau. Like it's Hall of Fame stuff, and he's just proving himself again this year over the first 2 series and 1 game that he's pretty effective.
Yeah, it's clear the impact that he has overall, no matter where he goes. It would be weird to see him in Toronto, but you said it depends on the circumstances. Razor, thank you so much for taking the time to wake up and join us here on Boston Has Entered the Chat.